Looking for love? Try the vibrational medicine that supports the manifestation of love. Flower Power Love Elixir at vesnapinter.com.au.
The outside world is always going to throw up what needs to be healed. So if you are seeing a lot of turbulence out in the outside world, that's also what's happening in your inner world. There's no point in trying to fix the outside world until you address the inner turbulence. For feelings to be that big in the body means that there's something really important underneath. The bigger the feeling, the bigger the gem. When we go to the origin of where our wounds are, there's an axiom in the law of the universe that says when you see something for what it is, it vanishes. It no longer has power over us. If we can go back and actually deal with that trauma, we can discharge that energy, and that energy transmutes into something that we can use. Welcome, my friend. I'm so happy that you have joined me here today to digest the mysteries of the cosmos and to contemplate the nature of our reality. I thought I might start with a little bit of an energetic weather report today because we are going through such tumultuous times. And I guess that's something that I've heard for years, since 2000 and I think it was 4 in the Venus Passover. We were all going, wow, we're ascending and da 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 da. But I think this whole process does take time, and it will challenge us at different times. But right now, I know myself personally, I'm feeling challenged with the waves. Not so much in this moment, but certainly earlier today has been quite challenging. So, and this is what I'm seeing for a lot of people. You know, we're stepping into the new, and we're being catapulted into the new, whether we like it or not. It hasn't yet formed, and yet we're still trying to cling to our routines and our structures so that we can feel some sense of stability and safety. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And what's really good to remember is that, you know, some of those feelings that you're feeling in there are visceral responses to perhaps stuff that's coming up to be healed. And so I guess what I wanted to talk about today also was, you know, how do we navigate all of that? And then also, how do we get along with annoying people or everybody else in the world that annoys us? So, so I was speaking with a friend this morning, and we were talking about the feelings of perhaps fear or anxiety that can live deep inside of us, that sometimes gets stirred up and by certain things, because no matter what, the outside world is always going to throw up for you what needs to be healed. So if you are seeing a lot of turbulence out in the outside world, that's also what's happening in your inner world. So there's no point in trying to fix the outside world until you address the inner turbulence. And my dear friend pointed out to me that sometimes these feelings of fear and anxiety can actually just be feelings of anticipation. So we know that something is coming, and sometimes our knowingness in our body is much greater than what we consciously know. So our body feels something is going to happen, And then we misinterpret that for anxiety or fear or whatever. And what I'm sensing is coming is more of a wildness in energy, you know, that raw, creative, fabulous, wild energy that you get when you're in the depths of nature. It's more of a connection to that and less of a connection to the avoidance of that. So this is where I guess I just wanted to share a story with you to just to take you through my own processing and how that might look in the outside world and the inner world, and hopefully might give you something to contemplate as to when these things come up for you, because it can be really confusing, you know. Like we can be taken over by our body sensations, and then of course the mind does all sorts of wild things to try and calm our system down, and it will try anything. It will lie. It will tell you all sorts of untruths. It will create stories. It will do all sorts of things because the mind's not absolutely centered on truth. It's just centered on data, and it also wants your energy to calm down. It wants to keep you safe, all the rest of it. So a couple of weeks ago, I had new neighbours that moved in, and where I live, I've got the apartment building next door is literally probably about 1.5 to 2 meters away from me, particularly on the side of my bedroom. And a couple of young men have moved in there, lovely young men, and however, there's been a few incidences of, you know, they're a bit noisy and they've woken me up in the middle of the night, and also this one particular morning, I had woken up, and that was probably about 6:30, and then within minutes I could hear them out on their front deck, which was meters away from my bedroom window, and they were having a good old get together and a laugh, and with their girlfriends, and you know, and I can tell you that I probably wasn't impressed, and it was a little bit more of a homicidal rage, actually, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, we could say I was a little bit not pleased. Anyway, I have trained myself very well over the years to allow these feelings to rise and come and go, because in my experience, nothing good comes from blurting anything when you're in the midst of an angry fit. So, but what I did notice as I was allowing myself to feel what I felt was how my mind tried to make it into a bigger story than actually what it was. It was saying that, you know, the mind was saying, wow, you know, your alarm doesn't even go off to 7, and they were out there at 6:30 and da-da-da-da. And it was like, well, hold on a moment. I'd actually woken up 10 minutes prior to that. So no, they didn't wake me. It was all in perfect flow, really. I was already awake. It had interfered with me being able to sit down and do a meditation. However, I was already agitated. I'd already felt the agitation in the field when I'd woken up. So, and again, I was trying to pin it on them, which was really interesting. So it always surprises me how, and I don't know why it surprises me, like I do this all the time, we do it all the time, is that how I've created something in my outside reality to validate my inside feelings. Anyway, I thought about it and I thought, well, maybe I should just stick my head out the window and just say to them, hey, I want you guys to be mindful about, that you live in a complex and blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, oh my God, what are you going on about? Anyway, regardless, I decided to take myself out to my back deck, sit down and actually really think about it, because for feelings to be that big in the body means that there's something really important underneath. That's the way I look at it anyway. These feelings are big. The bigger the feeling, the bigger the gem. So I went digging and I went mining for gold to see what was the gold underneath all of this that came out in just a very mundane story about, annoying neighbours, okay? Anyway, these neighbours, they're fine. They're lovely young men. Really, everything is joyful. There's no hostilities or anything there. But because I had had such wounding around having neighbours that were, very disruptive and disrespectful and all of those things that you would think. I had squatters that lived next to me for a long time, and until they could get them out, and it was very disruptive to my life. And I allowed myself to go all the way back. So going all the way back to where this disruption, distortion around neighbours is, and I sat down and I journaled every distortion about neighbours in my journal. And then it came, I was able to see what the feelings were, the sense of powerlessness. If it was powerlessness, it belongs in the solar plexus. Our solar plexus is how we integrate to the outside world. So this integration into the outside world allows us to see what our values, our identity, and how we negotiate and how we attract the outside world, and whether we feel powerful or not powerful. So our solar center, our sun center, is about our will. And it is the seat of our ego, but it's also the seat of our power. So knowing this, that, it had a lot to do with powerlessness, I asked myself a very simple question, which is one that I will ask clients a lot of the time. And it's what is it that you want from this situation? And are you willing to take back your power? And in other words, are you willing to be powerful in this situation? Are you willing to claim what it is that you want? And that's a very triggering question for a lot of people, because a lot of the time, particularly if we have identity issues or we have issues of the ego, wounding and things like that in the solar plexus, we don't want to stand in our power. We don't want to be powerful. We want to somehow have the universe co-sign our pain. We want the universe, or we want people to understand how powerless we are and what a victim we are in this life, and what a terrible story it is. And, and that's where the seed of trauma bonding is, and all of the rest of it. So anyway, at that time, by the time I had sorted through all of that, yes, I was actually really, what I wanted was to have peaceful and respectful neighbours. It was really simple. And I did have the will at that time. Only after going through all of that and allowing the emotions to transmute within me and transform within me, I then was able to go into that place of, okay, this is what I want. And I wrote it down, and I wrote it down on a piece of paper, and it was the affirmation that says, I only attract wonderful, peaceful, and respectful neighbours. I've already forgotten it. So because it was so, I was 100% on board with it. There was not a little part of me that was attached to not having this. Because, in the process of all that, my mind does things like, oh, well, now you'll have to leave. You'll have to leave that place. You'll have to move out. You'll have to go off. You'll have to do something else. Or you might have to write a letter. You have to write a letter. Dear landlords from next door, these are the guys. And, and it goes on and on around what the mind says is the solution, but it's not the solution. The solution is simply for me, the solution was to simply acknowledge what I wanted and to be willing, because we do create our reality. It's our belief systems and what we truly believe that creates our reality. So after I put that out into the universe really, really strongly, I also thought about, okay, well, evenings that they're more likely to be out there, or partying or, out there and doing all sorts of things, those evenings I can easily sleep in the spare room and stop lending my energy into something that really isn't a problem. I've got much bigger fish to fry. So anyway, that was something that settled quite well in me. And how that all worked itself out was they just disappeared. I don't know where they went to. I don't know. I've not seen them. I've not heard them. I haven't bumped into them along the way. I've noticed that their bins went out and came back. Not a peep. Whereas before that, I was hearing them every single day in all sorts of ways, and in the evenings and all sorts of things, which was, I was taking the opportunity to exercise my powerlessness in that moment. So now, I don't know if I dematerialize these young boys. I'm joking. I don't know, actually. I don't know what's actually happened there, but I managed to get what it is that I truly wanted, which wasn't to move house, which wasn't to leave this place, which wasn't to go somewhere where I thought outside was going to be more peaceful and more and better, because there's nothing outside of us. If we don't clean up what's inside, if we don't go to that place of where our wounds actually originate from, and that can be something like, early childhood or even past lives, for those of you that haven't had a lot to do with past lives or don't know much about past lives, Einstein says that all of time is like a plate. It's all happening at the one time, and we're just focusing on different points on that plate. So all time, past, present, and future is all happening here now. So when we look at so-called past lives and history, what we're really doing is we're accessing different dimensional realities of ourself, and we're calling forward different aspects of whatever the trauma is that we are dealing with. So not that that went that far back for me in this instance, but it doesn't mean to say it hasn't for many other things. So when we're investigating these things inside of ourselves, we do have access. It's just this belief that says that we can't access these memories. But when we start to really address where our beliefs came from, I will ask I will ask myself questions like, whose is this? Where did it start? Who does it belong to? Because it may not belong to me in this present moment, but it may belong to a younger version of me, and all of that information is readily available. And the reason that we want to be able to do things like that is that when we go to the origin of where our wounds are, when we go to the origin of where something started, there's an axiom in a law of the universe that says when you see something for what it is, it vanishes. So when we can see something for what it truly is, it no longer has power over us. And this is why a lot of the time we will negate our power because we're running an old story, we're running an old trauma. And if we can go back and actually deal with that trauma, go back to where it originated from, we can actually we can discharge that energy, and now all of a sudden we feel clearer, we feel more empowered, we feel more energized, and that energy transmutes into something that we can use, something that's better for us. So a lot of the time, I notice that whenever I go into my stories, I'm feeling powerless because I'm stuck in some old drama, or I'm stuck in some kind of a drama hook in some way, and something that may have played out in my childhood. I know for me, in human design, my radiance, not in human design and gene keys, I mean to say, in gene keys, it will tell you what gene you have in your radiance section, which is your auric health. So if you can go and do your chart for free on the Gene Keys website, and it'll tell you a little bit about what your radiance is, which is what you need to have health. You are healthy when, or your aura is healthy when this happens. And for me, it's very much to do with the energy of the people I live with, and my neighbours in particular as well. So where I live, the house I live in, the suburb I live in, the area I live in, is crucial to my auric health. For other people, it can be things like they need to be in a partnership. For other people, it might be things like they need alone time. So yeah, if you get onto the Gene Keys website, you'll be able to do up your own chart and just have a little bit of a play in there. It's actually really a very cool place of self-discovery. Anyway, going back to, so for me, having my radiance is very much dependent on the people that live around me. And you would think that that's out of my control. And it is, I guess, on some level, but I can actually, um, what's the word for it? Influence my field and the magnets in my field, so that I can then attract a better quality experience in my neighborhood. So oftentimes we will be challenged with wounding from our past. So, growing up for me to learn how to be healthy in my life, I grew up in a household that was often full of tension. It had neglect in a lot of ways as well. Not always. My mother was a very very attentive and nurturing woman in many ways, and in other ways she was not interested. And but my father was quite a wounded man himself, and there was often a lot of violence in the home, tension. He would go into fits of rage, and my home environment was very unstable in a lot of ways, very unreliable. So it never really knew what would happen in the home environment. So I developed wounds around that. And when I attract these things in the outside world, just like all of us, we all have these different wounds that are reflected in the outside world, that come back from previous places. And that then gives me the ability to heal that. And one of the ways that I practice self-healing is by reclaiming my power back from those situations, seeing it from an adult perspective, and also understanding that on some level, when I'm in a powerful position, I can just command a different existence. And that takes practice and doesn't always work. That's why I try different things all the time. I'm forever experimenting, and I encourage people to experiment. If you've got questions about manifestation, how to manifest in the world, and if things don't work for you, one of the things that I always suggest is focus on how you've manifested things to this point. If something in your life is going well, how did you manifest that? What are your beliefs around that? If they're not going well in the world, how did you manifest that? What are your beliefs around that? And when you ask the body and the field that, the answers come. And it's uncomfortable sometimes that, when you come across something in your world that you don't like, it could be anything. It could be, somebody hit the back of your car, for instance. You can, I'm always a bit conscious when I speak in this way, because the ego gets very, very ruffled around taking responsibility for anything. So, and I don't mean it in that way. I mean that if we become conscious around the energy that has contributed to what's happened, we've got a lot more power. None of us, well, I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for you guys, but I don't have 100% consciousness on how I create my reality at all. I'm mindful about certain things. I know certain techniques. I know what works. I know what doesn't. But there's constantly things that come up. So let's go back to someone hit you in the back of the car or something like that. You can ask yourself a question. How did I create this? And then you might have 15 little incidences that come up that have all led to this point. And it could be things like, you might have thought 3 weeks ago, God, I hate this car. I wish I had a new one. It could be something like, oh, you've got to be careful where you park because someone could hit you. It could be something like life is boring, or with something exciting happens. It could be any number of those things. But what I urge people to do is to really just become conscious, allowing, and not critical around how they manifest and create their reality, because that is the way that we then get a deeper understanding on how we can return our power back to us and how we can create the reality that we want. And the irony of that is the more that we clean out and the more of these karmic cycles that we step out of, and the more aligned we become in our world, the funny thing happens is that we don't necessarily want to create too much consciously because we're happy kind of going on the ride. But in the situation like with my neighbours, it was very clear to me that there was something that was disruptive in my field that I really wanted to address. And I did. And so far so good. It worked out pretty well. And the thing is, when you've got to the core of the issue, because your conscious beliefs aren't really what creates your reality. It's the ones that you pull in. It's the beliefs that you pull into yourself as almost like as this is your truth, right? It's different to knowingness. Knowingness is a whole other vibration and a whole other level of consciousness, and maybe in a future podcast I might talk about knowingness. So yeah, if you are brave enough to investigate how you create your own reality, I think it's a great exercise, because you can then start to see, and it becomes a little bit, it can destabilize you a little bit when you actually start to see the truth of it. And I think where I've had the privilege of being a kinesiologist for so many years and being able to test up what's actually going on in people's body, which means we can, there's the conscious thoughts, the mind says one thing, but the body says a whole other story. And in that incident with me, my body had rage. It had rage that came up when that happened, and the mind was trying to create a story around that so that I could make sense of the rage. But the truth of the reality I was seeing was that nothing major was happening, really. I'd woken up 10 minutes before. I already had agitation going on in my system. There was nothing really going on. They weren't doing anything really harmful other than chatting on their veranda at 6:30 in the morning. It honestly didn't wake me up or anything like that. So there was a flow there already, but the body was trying to, or the mind was trying to create a story that would justify the body's feelings, which was a visceral response to an old trauma and an old fear. It was just that fear of being out of control in my environment, and then it would create a problem with my health, and that's where the the story wanted to take me to. But the truth was that I could just change that reality if I wanted to. And I didn't want to until I found out where I had lost my power in the first place. Cheers. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Sometimes when I go into these places, it is quite a complex system that we live in. We live in this interdimensional body that has feelings, and we also have these beliefs, and then there's also the mind that we need to navigate as well. So it can get a little bit tricky along the path, but if you know some of these tools, if you know some of these skills, I'm going to tell you, the ride becomes more enjoyable and it becomes easier. There are less incidences that come up, so you have more times of having that peace because there's more peace inside. So I think it's in the Hindu religion where they say that it's a blessing when things trigger us in the outside world, and you can see why, but you have to know how. You have to know how to work through that and how to transmute and transform that energy so that you aren't just a victim of your mind's story, because your mind is a great storyteller. It wants to tell great stories, and it does, and it tries to validate your feelings, or it tries to validate those visceral feelings in your body. And those visceral feelings that you get, people sometimes ask me, well, how do you know the difference between that trigger and your intuition? And I think that's a whole other podcast. I think that's a great question because, in short, I would say just asking that question takes you into the answer within, because we do have the answers within. It's the questions that we need. So if you ask yourself, is this my intuition picking up on something? Am I triggered in this moment? Is my body in a trigger? You'll feel it. You'll get better at understanding that and navigating that. It's just being able to simply ask the question, like, is this mine? Is this somebody else's? Where does this belong? Does it belong in the present? Does it belong in the past? Oftentimes our intuition feels a little bit different to our triggered feelings, those visceral responses. It'll feel quite different. And if we again spend time looking inwards, spend time navigating even those voices that come up, when you want to connect with guides or something like that, and you hear some guidance and it kind of sits there. I know when I hear voices there, or I feel the voice or the answer coming from this space, I know it's my inner judge. So for me personally, that's an inner judge thing, and I can find out there. An inner judge is just the internalized voice of your external authorities. So it'll be your mom, your dad, your teacher, somebody that you gave authority over to that now feels like, or it sounds like it's you, and it's not. When I hear guidance that I feel almost in the center of my head, I pay attention to that one a little bit more. Yeah, and it's the same in your body as well, because our body is our unconscious mind. It's our deepest truth. So when the body has a specific sensation, a specific feeling, I tend to pay more attention to that as well. But when there's an emotional expression, like the rage that came up, that wasn't really the body sensation that I was talking about. That was more to do with an emotional expression. And emotions are, again, they are our guidance system, but they don't often belong in present time. In present time, when we're sensing things in present time more so, we'll feel it as a contraction or a particular feeling. But, like any language, it's a language that we need to learn, and it's an important one. And that's what I'm here to share with the world. I'm very excited to share about what I know about the language of the body, because I feel like everyone should know it, and I feel like it really helps. It helps me because I'm not just listening to the mind's quack quack, because the mind does like to just give me stories, and it's always based in the past, and it's data. It doesn't necessarily hand over any real truths. It's an important aspect of this reality that we live in, but it's not necessarily the truth of this present moment. So hopefully that has given you some food for contemplation. Come over to my website, and also please subscribe. If you got something out of this podcast today, please subscribe to whatever channel you're on, so that I have more capacity to produce more of these, and to give my assistance in any little way I can. And I've got tons of free stuff that I'm putting up on the website. Also have just launched some very exciting new vibrational medicine essences. I've got one, I don't even have them here. My darling friend who produces these videos for me will probably have a thing to say. Yes, check it out on my website. One is it's a mixture of vibrational remedies. One keeps you in the vibration of infinite wealth. The other one keeps you in the vibration of, it's a love elixir that I am putting together. And the other one is a wellspring. So it's there to actually help our radiance and our well-being. It helps to keep us in the high vibrations of all of those. They are essences that I have personally muscle tested for the collective, and I will change as the energy, as each batch gets made. I muscle test them personally to make sure that it is right on tune, right on date, with what's happening in the collective, and so it can be very, very relevant to this time frame that we're going through now. So yes, if you would like assistance with keeping your frequency in a state of infinite wealth, love elixir, just a little side note, I got the idea of doing these particular essences because I would often make up a love potion for my daughters when they were going through, a breakup. So if it was, Mum, have I got love blocks? Can you help me out with, attracting a great partner in my life or whatever? And so I would make it up through the flower essences. I would muscle test up a love elixir, and it worked 100% of the time. So they're great. And anybody that wants to know more about vibrational remedies and things like that, just go over to my website, have a look around. The ones I use predominantly at the moment are the Australian bush flower essences. Currently, I'm not sending them overseas, so I do apologize to my overseas clients and people watching this. However, if there is a need, drop me a line, and if I get enough people that are interested in it from overseas, I'll see what I can do. Put it out there. Vesna, make the affirmation. Vesna sends her vibrational remedies overseas, whatever. You create it. It's your reality. You create it. Do whatever you like. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. It was great to chat about these things. Please drop me a line if you want to hear about anything in particular too. I'm very open to suggestions. Otherwise, I will just give you a weather report the next time I get on. And yeah, many blessings. Stay grounded and and just remember you are more powerful than what you know, and there is nothing out there that is more powerful than you. There's nothing out there. It's all in here. So blessings, lots of love, and I'll see you next time.